Sir, ma'am, like we are ready to start the program. We are going to start the program in a couple of minutes. Sriram, sir, we are not able to hear you. You have come out of the laptop. Right now, you are only on mobile, sir. Sriram, sir, you are not audible. Sriram, sir, we are not able to hear you. Sriram, sir, we are not able to hear you. Nagesh, sir, are you able to hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, there is a connectivity issue with Sriram, sir. Maybe we have to check with him. Sir, if sir is ready, we will start, sir.
Sriram sir, are you ready? Sriram sir.
Sriram, sir, we are not able to hear you. Yeah, sir, shall we start? Nagesh, sir?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, no, because he is not there, so that's why I'm thinking. Can you find out with him, sir, like whether any issues kind of thing?
Yeah, let me check, sir. Sriram sir.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, now we can hear
Perfect.
you, sir.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. So good morning, all of you, and we welcome you all for this webinar on data center threats and vulnerabilities. Hope I am audible to all of you. Please say yes or no in the chat area so that we will take it further. Right. Thank you so much. Nisha Shah, thank you. Yeah. So we welcome you all for this 2-hour webinar on data center threats and vulnerabilities. Of course, we know that very clearly, like within 2 hours, we cannot finish everything. So we just wanted to give a glimpse from the four industry dominant experts who are into the field since from a long time in this particular domain. So that is how like we have planned this. So this program we were organizing as part of the National Cybersecurity Awareness Month. So as you all know, like this October month is observed globally, observed as a National Cybersecurity Awareness Month. So as part of that, like this data center is also plays a very key role in terms of safeguard your data and whatnot, all those things, right? So that is one aspect. And second aspect, like we were doing this program as part of in collaboration with the Sahyadri College of Engineering and Management, which is located in Mangalore. So let me give a brief introduction about the program by the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology. So before we move on to it, so this is a program by the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology to address the core research manpower in our country. So that to address that need, like we are offering these formal and non-formal courses at BTech level, MTech level, PhD level, and all that thing. That is one thing we were doing. And second thing, like we are also trying to upgrade the skills of the faculty so that they will be able to deliver their services and those things effectively. And we are also training the government officials on various aspects, government professionals, like the people who are in the various organizations like SETIN, NIC and all, CDAC and all. So all those people, like we are training them, and we are also giving the skills so that they will be able to take care of the national important aspects as well as security related aspects. And we are also doing this awareness campaign to various stakeholders for implementing all these things. Like these 52 institutions are associated as part of the project, including ISEA Bangalore and IITs, NITs, state technical universities and all. And like for government official training program like CDAC and IRIT is taking care, and awareness like CDAC Hyderabad is managing that. And this is how like we are trying to reach various group of users, like in the awareness, like by organizing the various awareness workshops to the different stakeholders. And in indirect mode, like we have excellent infosecawareness.in web portal where it will help you, like a lot many things are there. So in this entire national awareness campaign, as you know, many of the participant might aware, like Dr. Ananta Prabhu sir is also supporting this initiative, and he is also contributing a lot towards making the nation as a cyber secure nation. So by releasing various books and all, very elaborate manner the books were created, and we're also promoting those books. And as a whole, like we are trying to create the cyber aware country. We wanted to see that like our country should progress and ensure like everybody should take care by their own, right? So that is how like we collaboratively working. So with the support of Dr. Ananta Prabhu sir, like today's session we are organizing ISEA Sahyadri College of Engineering and Management and Cyber Girl. So all these organizations put together, today's session we were organizing. This is the web portal, like where you can access a lot of information. That's a brief about this project. And if you want to know more about that, like I request all of you kindly visit that infosecawareness.in so that you can download all awareness material, including the cyber safeguard books and the material which we have developed as part of this activity kind of thing, and which will be useful for you also to create this awareness and all. There have been a lot many quizzes like cyber patriot quiz and cyber hygiene practitioner. All these quizzes are also there to enhance your skills in various aspects, right? So with that background, we welcome you all once again to this session on this data center threats and vulnerabilities. So which we are organizing in association with the Sahyadri College of Engineering. So we have excellent speakers for today's session. So we have Dr. Sriram, Mr. Sriram Krishna Prasad, and we also have Dr. Nagesh, and we also have Mr. Satish Babu, and we also have Mrs. Indraveni with us. And all these people are going to take this session on various aspects. So the first session which we are going to have is role of data centers in current scenario. The first session which we are going to have is a role of data centers in current scenario. This session is going to be handled by Mr. Sriram Krishna Prasad, who is working as a senior manager at Boeing Test and Evaluation, Boeing India Private Limited. So let me give a brief about Mr. Sriram. Mr. Sriram has a bachelor's in mechanical engineering from University of Mysore and master's from Wichita State University in Canada, USA, and he has 20 plus years of experience in leading the aircraft design programs, and started his career working for a Cessna aircraft company both in USA and India, and is currently works as a Boeing senior manager for Boeing Test and Evaluation Centers. So this is the brief about Dr. Sriram. And if at all if you are interested, you also can visit the search LinkedIn page. I'm just going to display it here so that you can have a glance on that thing. So you also can send a request. So this is about Mr. Sriram Krishna Prasad. So you can have more details with respect to him on this LinkedIn page, and you can have a glance, right? So with this brief introduction, we welcome Dr. Sriram Krishna Prasad for taking the first session. So over to you, sir. And we were giving the privileges to you as a presenter. You can share the your presentation and you can start the session, sir. Thank you. And once again, we welcome you, sir.
Sure. Thank you very much. This is a very honorable opportunity for me. Thanks to Jagdish sir, Dr. Nagesh, and primarily Dr. Anand Prabhu for giving this opportunity and trusting me that I can be a speaker and address this August audience on a very important and very relevant subject for today. I don't have a presentation, and so I'm going to speak through it. So I live in a joint family with my dad, uh, my mother-in-law, my kids, my wife. So for everyone, cybersecurity is very important. We have constantly followed Dr. Anand Prabhu's both the Facebook page, its WhatsApp, and all the social media postings, and it has definitely made us well aware of the different cybersecurity threats, and then how we can be a warrior in this new cyber world or the cyber war, we can call it. So now, I've been called to talk about a very important topic today, right? I work for an aircraft industry where data is everything. Unfortunately, due to my job obligations, I'm not going to speak a lot about things that is relevant to my work, but I'm going to talk very generally about what is data, right? So for a person, the name, the date of birth, the address, and all the particulars, all the personal identifiable information is data. And for an organization or for an enterprise, let's say we all use WhatsApp quite a bit, right? For WhatsApp, all the pictures, all the messages, all the videos in various languages is data. For we all shop, we either go to a mall, we either go to a different commodity shop, and for that shop the data is information on their assets, on their sales and other information. So how is the data being managed? So all this data is managed at a data center. Data center, like anything else, is a facility. It has a combination of networked computers, it has storage systems, and it has computing infrastructure. All these are important. The network computers help us in receiving data, interacting with the users. The storage systems or the backend which store all the data. Consider large enterprises which deals with heavy data, and imagine the kind of systems that needs to be in place to save and store and retrieve and use and compute all the data, right? So this data center has to process has to process the data, receive data, store data, and actively compute uh, data to give the user the relevant information. I'll give an example, right? Suppose we all use email. Some of us use Gmail, some of us use Yahoo Mail, we use different emails. So all these emails are stored in a data center in that respective domain, right? And then whenever you want to retrieve this information, we have to process this information, you can use different filters to from date received, a subject or topic. So these email data servers or data centers has to process based on, has to talk to you, right? You can give the input on what data you're looking for, has to store the data, has to disseminate the data when it's required, give you the information that you're looking for. Eventually it deals with a large amount of data. So today we are at a situation where all the businesses, irrespective of what business you are in a business of like a Swiggy or a Zomato, which delivers food to customers, in business of social media like Facebook and WhatsApp, which deals with your personal data and a lot of public data. All businesses today depend on data, and each businesses will have its own application, provide its own services, and all this data today is in a data center. So these enterprise data centers increasingly use facilities for securing and protecting data. So you'll hear more about the threats and vulnerabilities for data from Dr. Nagesh in the uh, next speech. And Dr. Satish is also going to talk more about how do you secure these data centers. And Dr. Indraveni will talk about the policies and procedures. But what I will do here is just give you a brief outline of how these data centers work. Some of these data centers are in like physical facilities, like I just mentioned, and some of them are in cloud computing. So these cloud providers have data centers, which can be like the enterprise data centers. So how does these data centers work? So these data centers have systems for storing, sharing, accessing, and processing data. It has a physical infrastructure for data processing and communicating. And it also needs a lot of electricity, network security, UPS. So in a nutshell, there are various kinds of data centers. Some of these are enterprise data centers, which is for internal use only. For example, let's imagine we are in a hotel and the server asks you for what you want to eat, and he types it or keys it into his own notepad. And that is a data, right? That goes and becomes visible to the cook or in the kitchen to prepare that dish. So this is an internal end user, right? The customer probably doesn't see it until you see the bill. So uh, these are enterprise data centers. Similarly, they are managed services data centers. Imagine banks, right? I mean, all these data centers are leased by the banks. They are operated by the third parties. There are various third parties which act as data centers, which help enable some of these organizations uh, develop applications, provide services, uh, which help users at a regular basis. And there are also cloud-based data centers. I mean, you're all aware of the Amazon Web Services, the Google Cloud Platform. So there are similar lot of other cloud-based data centers that are available. Similarly, there are we also co-location of data centers, where it's a combination of facilities, combination of infrastructure provided by the companies. And there are also others like the edge and the hyperscale data centers, which I'll not go in detail just because of the time and because of my knowledge in a lot of these data centers. So how are these managed, right? I mean, data centers need some facilities management, just like any other organization. There is to be an inventory, asset management, and because these data centers have to be 365 days a year, 24/7 day. So this has to be, there has to be predictive, proactive, prescriptive maintenance going around. So this facility management, this inventory, asset management of data centers is very important. The infrastructure management, the monitoring of this data center is very important. We all know there was a flood situation in Bangalore, and then some of the companies had data centers in the basement of their organizations or their towers, which caused these data centers to be inaccessible, right? So how do you plan the disaster recovery? So the infrastructure management, the infrastructure monitoring helps us with this disaster recovery. Similarly, there has to be a constant technical support. There has to be constant operational support. There has to be energy, and there has to be a data center security, which we'll know more in the future slides. So this is in nutshell what a data center is, how a data center works, and what are the different ways of uh, different types and different ways the data centers are managed. And just for the benefit of all the audience here, I would like to just give a small assignment. I mean, I know there are a lot of students on this call. Uh, I want to just quickly give an assignment like a take-home test, if you can call it. I mean, I want to bring up two examples that we generally use in our day-to-day life. One is WhatsApp. Just to give a brief idea, WhatsApp has more than 1+ billion active users. There are more than 1.4 billion monthly active users on WhatsApp. There are 55 billion messages sent every day. There are 4.5 billion photos per day. That's how much we transact. We have 1 billion videos a day. And then all these transactions, all this communication happens in 60 different languages. And then WhatsApp has to support all this. How do you design a data center or something like this? And how do you design the architecture to input data, store data, retrieve data, and then bring it to the users when it's available? So that's one assignment, all right? The second one that I want all of you to think about is the Unified Payment Interface, or UPI, which helps us to immediately transfer money from multiple banks. So this has to have the data access for these multiple banks. It has to have a lot of data availability of your personal identifiable information, your bank account, your PIN, generally the amount of money that you have. It has to go scan a barcode. This has to be available 365 days, 24/7. It has to also be able to do utility payments like your electricity bill, your prepaid phone bill, your postpaid phone bill. It has to help you with shopping. It has to help you with movie tickets. And it also, time and again, has to also help you with collecting donations. So how do you design a data center for this second situation? So I would like some of the students here on the call to take this as an assignment and then probably just draw an infrastructure or networking on how do you store data, how do you retrieve data, how do you calculate information and make it available to the users when they ask for it, right? So I would like to share a few thoughts before I wind up. I'll take 3 to 4 more minutes, and then I can also take questions if required. I'll leave about 5 minutes at the end for a Q&A, just in case. Or I can also take questions to Dr. Anand Prabhu or Dr. Nagesh. I mean, they're better in answering probably than me, but I'll be happy to take some other questions. So today, above all else, show the data. If you go talk to somebody and say that my college, uh, Sahadri College, is the most prestigious and the best college in the world, somebody will say, show me the data, right? What is the data that can prove that this is the best college? So data is above all else in this time and age of life. So data is the new oil, data is the new wealth, and data is the new raw material, right? Just like we have aluminum to make aircrafts, we have composites to make aircraft, and then all the bank accounts, all the UPIs, all the stock markets, it's all data driven in this new industry. And data is precious, and it will last longer than the systems. Earlier, all this data used to be book based, like pen and paper based. All our mark sheets used to be pen and paper based. All our exams used to be pen and paper based. We were gradually transforming to more be an electronic driven society, and all this eventually is becoming electronic data. So data is precious, and data has to last longer than the systems. There's one thought that I want to leave everyone with. There can be data without information, right? There can be data with no information, but there can be no information without data. And that's how important data is, and that's how important data centers are. And that's why securing these data centers, stopping them from all the threats and vulnerabilities, and having some strong policies and procedures to secure this data becomes very relevant in this time and age. So thank you.
Thank you, Sriram sir. Like excellently narrated, like what is the data and how do we secure and about all these fundamentals. Thank you so much for your excellent thoughts and last but not least, like at least you also told like very clearly like what importance of the data, especially. So that what makes sense in the cyberspace. We all know like data is important, but thank you so much. And the participant, like if you have any questions, kindly keep it in the chat area so that sir will address before we move on to the next session. If you have any questions, kindly keep it in the chat area so that we'll take up those questions in consultation with Sriram sir before we move on to the next session. Any questions?
For me, the great source of information for all the cyber related
Yes,
things, Dr. Anand Prabhu's
yes.
feeds. So please follow Dr. Anand Prabhu and then take them
Yeah,
seriously.
sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Azhar Islam, it was a great learning experience. Thank you very much, sir. Okay. So there was thanking message for you, sir. It was a great learning experience, and they have thanked you for the wonderful session which you have handled.
Likewise here. I'm also looking forward for the next 3 sessions. I'm pretty sure they'll be a lot more informative because it is about a very sensitive and critical topic.
Yeah, that's great. And we all know like data is very important. How do we protect the data?
That's exactly what we are going to hear from Dr. Satish and Dr. Nagesh in the next next few discussions. So I'll say it for them.
Okay. Okay, good. Yes, Tiwari sir, tell me, sir. Ashok H.N. Tiwari sir, please tell me, sir. Tell me, sir. Like, you do you have any question? Okay, what we do in time of data center failure?
Right. So today we actually have uh, something called a disaster recovery plan or a disaster management plan. So every organization which is data dependent always has a backup, and then they always go and it's just like UPS for power and electricity. Similarly, for data, we always have a backup, and then we go rely on that whenever there is a failure at a certain data center. We go back and lean on our disaster recovery centers.
All right. I think one more question. How to get a government cybersecurity job?
Uh, I'm probably not the right person. If I know, I can also take that route.
Correct.
But as of now, I probably am not the right person to answer that.
Okay. Okay. So someone is asking like, what is the checklist for data center? I
Right.
want to know about the DLP. Okay. He wanted to know about the DLP in a bank checklist.
Right. That's probably a long answer. I can probably connect with that person offline and then provide more relevant information on that. But that's very important. That's a good question actually, and then that's a longer conversation.
Okay, how to protect data center malware attacks? What can we do in case of malware attack?
Right. I'll save it for Dr. Nagesh sir. He's coming up with information on threats and vulnerabilities for a data center, and then how can we position ourselves for better protecting our data centers.
I think these are the questions to Nagesh sir, like where he can address all the questions in his as part of his presentation, right? Is a third-party data center better or a custom-handled data center by us?
Yeah. So depends on the kind of data, right? For example, my wife is the founder of QuickRide, which provides carpooling and taxi services. And for them to host their own data center is a lot of money. So they use Amazon Web Services or cloud computing for the data centers. But for companies like ISRO and then other companies where data is very sensitive and uh, sharing data becomes a challenge, it is preferable to have their own data centers. So it is very dependent on the nature of business, on how important the data is for the respective organizations.
That's great. Is data center categorized based on the cost?
Most of the times, yes, data centers are based on the cost. I mean, like today I talked about Amazon Web Services, Google Cloud Platform. So just like some of our other UPI banks, they keep coming up with good deals. So companies keep moving from one data center to the other data center based on the cost. But I mean, sometimes data security, vulnerability, and also the policy and procedures becomes more important. We should probably put safety ahead of everything else when you're deciding on a data center.
All right, sir. Thank you. And Ashok H.N. Tiwari, sir, we can understand your problem. Like at this point of time, like we are not unmuting you. So after some time, I will unmute you so that you can pose all your questions to the speaker, sir. Right? Around 12, I will do it. So right now, we were not able to do it. We are sorry for the same. Want various questions? Yes, we will unmute you, sir. Definitely, you can. Okay, I think you
Okay.
are. Let
Yeah.
me unmute him. Yeah, please go ahead, Ashok sir. Ashok H.N. Tiwari sir,
Yeah,
please go ahead. I unmute.
very good morning, all of you, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Allow me, speak so various questions from my side. Actually, I am a IT head in a bank, so we are handling CISO level task and create awareness and DLP level some issues we are facing now actually. So my question is a specific checklist for a DLP for any industry and a bank and various challenges in a data center also. You have a checklist for a data center for all activity and DLP and IT operations related checklist you have. So lots of my questions we have of my side actually, sir.
Sir,
Sure.
like
Yeah.
Sriram sir also said like he will connect you offline. So maybe I can share your details with him so that
And just one more thing, sir. सोशल मीडिया पे हम लोग जो कैंपेन वगैरह अभी जो आता है आपके साइट से, सो उस पे बहुत सारे लोग अभी जुड़े नहीं हैं। तो मेरा कहना ये है कि जितने भी आईटी या बैंक से रिलेटेड जो आईटी प्रोफेशनल लोग हैं, उनको हम लोग जोड़ते हैं, तो जिससे क्या हो लोग अवेयर होंगे। अभी जो भी क्वेश्चंस आपके आते हैं ना, तो मैं फेसबुक या सोशल मीडिया पे जितने भी प्लेटफॉर्म है मैं वो सबको अवेयर करता हूँ। बट कुछ तो ऐसा एप्रिसिएशन होना चाहिए जिससे लोग थोड़ा इंकरेज होंगे कि और करना है इसको, वैसा जो आईटी प्रोफेशनल के लोग हैं।
all right, thank you. Yes, what to you, sir? What to you, Sriram sir? If you get the answer.
Yeah, that's a good suggestion. I think we should work with the relevant authorities on how do we bring in more awareness, how do we have more campaigns, and then how do we educate people continuously and constantly on some of these cyber threats and other data related activities.
All right. So I think one more question, sir. What are the security tools a must for a medium and a large size data center?
Right. I think Satish is going to address that in securing data centers. That's coming up.
Okay. And how to evaluate the security risk of a data center?
Yeah, again, that will be dealt with in our futures. I think we will wait. My suggestion is to wait till the end of the session for questions because some of these will be covered in the next by the next
Yeah,
three
I think the
speakers.
last question, which is very important also. Recently, WhatsApp server got down. What might be the reason, sir? In a simple words, is it a data center failure?
I mean, what I read in the news is a data center failure, and then WhatsApp as an organization saw a threat, and so they disconnected the data center, made sure the threat is mitigated, and uh, push the button again for it to be active.
Okay, how to confirm that WhatsApp data is hacked or not?
I have the same question.
All right, thank you, Sriram sir, for your session as well as addressing most of the queries. Right. So now we will move on to the next session. So let me give a brief introduction about Dr. Nagesh sir. So before he start his session, sir, I give you the privileges. You can start sharing the screen. And before that, let me read out about Dr. Nagesh sir. So presently, Dr. Nagesh sir is currently working as a Dean Faculty and Professor, Head of the Professor and Head Department of Computer Science and Engineering at Sahyadri College of Engineering and Management, Mangaluru, India. And he has obtained his BTech from NMA, MIT, and NITI MTech, and PhD from National Institute of Technology, Karnataka, Surathkal. And he has got more than 26 years of experience in the field of teaching and research. His subjects of interest are computer networks, distributed computing, cloud computing, big data analytics, cryptography and network security, system programming and object-oriented programming, etc. He has published more than 85 research papers in national and international conferences and journals. He has filed 5 Indian patents. He has delivered more than 35 invited talks, and he has also chaired many sessions in the international and national level conferences. He had also worked at a visiting faculty at National Institute of Technology, Karnataka, Surathkal, and NITK Science and Technology Entrepreneurs Park, Karnataka, Surathkal, and published 2 books titled Fundamentals of CMOS VLSI Design for fifth semester Electronics and Communication Engineering students of V2U, and personal education VLSI design for the 5th semester electronics and communication engineering for the students of JNTU, and worked as a member of BOE for UG students of computer science and engineering at VTU Belgavi, and worked as a member of BOS in Computer Science and Engineering at VTU Belgaum for the year 2013 to 2016. He has guided more than 7 PhD scholars and currently guiding 5 PhD scholars. And his vision group on science and technology, Department of Information Technology, biotechnology and biotechnology, science and technology, Government of Karnataka, has funded rupees of 40 lakhs for his research project titled Technology Aided Agriculture Optimization. So with this brief introduction, we request Dr. Nagesh sir to start the session.
Thank you, sir, for a brief introduction.
Yes, sir.
So at the outset, I thank the Ministry of Government of India and especially the Jagadish sir and his team for giving me an opportunity to be the part of this program. And my fellow mate, Dr. Anand Prabhu, who has initiated this awareness program. And my objective of the presentation is actually what are the main threats and vulnerabilities as far as the data centers are concerned. Because Sriram sir spoke about what is the role of data centers, why data is so important, and because now everything we are dealing with data in terabytes or petabytes, and more weightage is given for the data. So that is where the Sriram sir has mentioned about what is the importance of a data center in the current scenario. And the agenda of my presentation is what are the main threats for the data centers and what are the main vulnerabilities as far as the data centers are concerned. And data centers are very important in the current scenario, as Sriram sir has mentioned, because it is going to play a major role as far as the business part of the organization is concerned. And when you talk about the data centers as a part of the business organization, you will be having the main threats. The main threats as to the availability, because the data centers, now you are having 2 ways of maintaining the data centers. Some part of the data center can be maintained in the offline or at the organization itself, and some part of that may be maintained at the cloud level. But whatever the data centers you're going to maintain, so all the services provided by these data centers will be accessed through the internet, which is a public network. And especially when the services of the data center are available, made available through the internet, then one important aspect is actually the services should be available 24/7 and 7 days a week it should be available. And the security of the data centers, mainly we need to concentrate on the availability of the services of the data centers. Once the services are available, then the second thing is what about the security of the data centers on the underlying infrastructure, because as far as the data center is concerned, the infrastructure of the data center is very, very important. Then, so what about the threats to the underlying infrastructure where you are going to maintain the data center, whether it is at the premises of the organization or it may be at the cloud side. Cyber threats to the data and applications which are hosted on this infrastructure. So what are the cyber threats you are going to have for the data as well as the applications which are hosted on the infrastructure? It may be maintained at the cloud side or at the premises of the organization which is going to maintain the data center. So as far as the threats are concerned, it can be categorized in different ways. One of the threat is actually direct infrastructure attacks. Because when you consider the data centers, it is having mainly three components. One is the computing, and you are having the storage and the network functionality. So these are the main components of the data centers. And any exploits against this infrastructure may be it may be having an impact on the availability of the data center itself or the services provided by the data center. And if the services are not made available, or whatever the services which are provided by the data center, it may not be up to the mark, or it may be whatever the delay provided by the data center in giving the services to the end users, it may have an impact on the performance as well as the security of the data center. Now, how we are going to have this direct infrastructure? So data centers mainly we are going to design in a variety of ways where we can have the defenses against the infrastructure exploits. And as one of the questions that was posed in the earlier session to the Sriram sir, so how you are going to tackle the infrastructure exploits? Mainly we are going for use of the redundant facilities. Redundant facilities are provided because you want to make the availability of the infrastructure for providing whatever the services of the data centers. So in case of any failure of one data center because of the threat, or it may be because of any other failures or network failure, then the request for accessing the services may be directed to the another copy or the multiple redundant copies you are going to maintain at the different part of the organization, or maybe different part of the cloud. And so this makes, because when the redundant copies of this data centers or services are made available, then it may be difficult for the attackers to disrupt the applications which are hosted on this infrastructures. Then the data centers are having the support infrastructure which will be designed to address the any unavoidable events, maybe because of the disasters. How you are going to handle the services which are provided by the data centers, because as I mentioned, we are going to have the redundant infrastructure so that we can take care of the natural events or whatever the attacks that can be generated to access the services. And another type of threat is actually the cyber attacks against the hosted services. So first is the infrastructure levels attack to the infrastructure itself or to the physical infrastructure of the data center itself. Either it is maintained at the cloud level or it may be at the organization's premises level. And second type is actually, because this data centers you are going to host different services. Okay, these services maybe the critical services or maybe any customer facing applications, and these applications which are hosted in this data centers, so it may be having the attacks on different ways. One of them is the web and application attacks. So this web applications, they are already vulnerable to the variety of attacks. So like one of the attack may be the web applications may be having uh, authentication which may not be using stronger authentication methods, or you may be using some cryptographic techniques for securing the data when the data is transmitted from the organization premises to the cloud, or maybe from the cloud to the end user, or maybe the end user to the cloud. When the data is exchanged between this, if you want to secure the data, you may be providing or you may be using some cryptographic techniques. But you may be using some weaker cryptographic techniques, and that may be the attackers can do some brute force analysis or brute force attack on the data, whatever it is transmitted, which will be using some cryptographic technique which are having weak in nature and the time taken, because with the present day available hardwares available or the processing capabilities available, so brute force attack with the weaker key length of the cryptographic technique, it may take very less time to identify the keys which can be used for decrypting the data or revealing the content of the data. And another important attack is actually the distributed denial of service, or in general it is denial of service attack. Denial of service attack, it is a never ending problem. It may not be only on the services of the data center or the data center itself. You can think of any of the services provided by the network. The attackers can pose a distributed denial of service or denial of service attack. See, for example, what they are going to do is actually they are going to flood the network with dummy login requests. For example, as a user, you are going to use a telnet service as a remote login service. In that case, if they want to post this denial of service attack, what they can do is they can flood the network with a dummy login request. When the network is flooded with a dummy login request, so the network will get congested. When the network gets congested, the routers or the networking element, they will start discarding the packets. If the packets which are discarded by the routers or networking element, if they belong to the actual telnet login request, then you will be denied from the telnet login. Similarly, it may be the request may be from a remote user for accessing the services provided by the data center, or maybe the applications which are configured or installed in the data center. So on this also, an attacker can force a denial of service attack. It may be from a single source it is generated, or from the multiple sources they are generating the denial of service attack by flooding the network with the dummy packets, so that the actual request will not reach to the server itself. Then this DDoS attacks or these threats will have an attack on the availability, because the services are, they will see through that the services provided by the data centers are not available to the actual authenticated and authorized users. Forget about unauthorized or unauthenticated user. Authorized users, the services are not available because network is flooded with the dummy packets, so that the network is congested, it will start discarding the packet. And this DDoS attack on the availability, that will lead to loss of revenue or the customer and the reputation of the organization itself, because the data center, the importance of the data center in the present scenario is actually very important, as the Sriram sir has already mentioned. So it is not only the losing your revenue, you are going to lose the customers, and the reputation of the organization will also be lost. And another type of threat to the data center is actually a DNS attack. So as all of you may be knowing what is the use of a DNS, mainly when you are going to use the domain name, so mainly the DNS is used for mapping this domain name to the IP address, and that domain name or name resolving may be maintained as a centralized database or a distributed database. And when this distributed database or DNS servers are maintained for having a distributed databases of the domain name mapping, and this are maintained, this domain name servers can also be maintained in the data centers. And in the data center infrastructure, when this DNS servers are maintained, they are also vulnerable to the DNS DDoS attacks. So as I mentioned, the DOS attack is a never-ending problem, and it is not only for the data centers, any type of other type of services you're going to access from the network or any web applications. Okay, for that also you are having the denial of service attack, and it may be the DNS may be vulnerable to DDoS attack, where when you are given the request for converting or mapping this domain name to the IP address. Okay, so this request will go to the DNS server which is configured in the data center, and an attacker can throw a denial of service attack or DDoS attack so that your request will not reach to the DNS server. He may create a lot of network traffic by creating some domain login request that will be posted onto the network, and network may be flooded with the traffic. Then the network may start discarding the packet. Your actual request which is given for mapping this domain name to the IP address may not reach to the DNS server. Without getting the IP address, you may not able to connect to the server whichever you want to log in, or you want to access some web page, or you want to access some services. And that is where you are having DDoS attack on the DNS which is maintained in the data centers. Or it may be cache poisoning, whatever the cache which is containing the DNS table having the mapping between the domain name and IP address. So if the attacker is having the access to the cache which is maintained in the DNS server, then he may try to modify the IP addresses. Okay, so maybe if some domain name is mapped to some IP address, if he is given the access to the cache of the DNS, he may try to modify the IP address, or he may substitute a actual IP address of his server, so that that IP address is returned as a request to the domain name, okay, that is sent from the browser. Then so that IP address may be used for establishing the TCP connection to a different server than the actual server where you want to access, where you want to connect and access some services. And similarly, you are having so many other type of threats as far as the DNS servers which are maintained in the data centers. Another type of threat on the data center is actually the credential compromise. So credentials can be breached by using the data breaching attacks or credential stuffing attacks, or you can also attackers can also go for phishing. They may imitate as an authorized or authenticated user, and they may try to reveal some confidential information. Using that, they may try to access, and so they can use all these credentials to access or exploit the online accounts which are maintained by the users at the data centers for giving access or accessing some services which are configured in the data centers. And what are the vulnerabilities? So these are the attacks. What are the vulnerabilities as far as the data centers are concerned? Mainly, as I mentioned, data centers are hosting some applications, okay, and these applications may be having some vulnerabilities. The vulnerability may not be with the data center, it may be the applications which are hosted in the data center. That application itself may be having some vulnerabilities. So applications hosted on the data centers infrastructure can contain some vulnerable code, because that application which is developed, that may be having some flaw as far as the design of that application is concerned, or whatever the authentication techniques which are used. and what may be the size of the password, especially when you're using a simple type of authentication like username and password, and that may be weak. The application may be designed to provide an authentication where with the weaker passwords, right? Weaker password. So that may be a vulnerable code which is contained in the application. So that may uh, provide a room for the attackers to do some attack as far as the applications which are configured in the data centers are concerned. And another thing is, another vulnerability is actually the remote access tools, because as you are moving from, in the pre-pandemic period, okay, or with the, after the wake of the pandemic, the companies are deploying the remote access, right? Remote access or work from home facilities given for the employees of the organization, because now most of the organizations, IT organizations, they are migrating from offline to online, and because the maintenance cost or whatever the cost that is incurred, so that may be less. So that is why they are planning to go ahead with the remote working or work from home. And for connecting from the remote place or from their houses to the remote servers or the servers which are maintained at their organizations, they are using the remote desktop protocol. And this remote desktop protocol is having some of the flaws or some of the problems. One is actually it is using the weaker authentication technique, weaker authentication. It allows the user to use any passwords, right? Any password, there is no restriction, and organizations are not going to maintain so about the passwords and what type of the password or the complexity of the password that needs to be given. That is the one thing. Another important thing is actually the port number that is used by RDP for connection or connecting to the remote machine. So it is actually a default port number is actually 3389, and all the attacker, they know that. So if the users are using the remote login or the remote access or RDP protocol, they are using 3389 as a port number, and they may try to use that port number for revealing some data or accessing some data or accessing some network. Okay, so these are the problems you are having with the RDP protocol. That will be an vulnerability will be used by the attackers to do an attack on the applications or which are configured in the data centers. Another thing is actually the using the virtual private network, because this virtual private network, so using this virtual private network, what you are able to do is you are able to secure your traffic from the router which is contained at the exit perimeter of any organization network into the destination network. Okay, especially when the data is transmitted in the public network or the internet, you are able to protect the data. But the router or the gateway you are having at the exit perimeter of the source network, if an attacker is able to compromise with that, and that host or that host will be having, because the in the virtual private network concept, the router you are going to have at the exit perimeter of the source network, okay, that is connected to the public network or the internet. If the attacker is able to compromise, then it is possible for him to get the credentials or some unpatched vulnerabilities can be used. With that, he can gain access or he can configure some malwares on the corporate system, or you are having a router at the exit perimeter of the network. So same thing may happen. Even then you are not able to compromise with the router at the exit perimeter of the source network, and you can also go for compromising the router at the entry perimeter of the destination network. So there also all this decryption or all this cryptographic techniques applying, or all security measures you are going to take, all this will be applied at the router you are going to have at the entry perimeter of the destination network. So an attacker can also compromise as far as that is concerned. He can also go for compromising that. With that, he will get some credentials and he can use that credentials for getting access to the data centers or the applications which are configured in the data centers. And he can also go for configuring some malware as far as the router which is contained in the entry perimeter or at the exit perimeter of the network is concerned. And another type of vulnerability is actually the supply chain vulnerabilities. Now, some of the organizations, they rely on the third party applications, so which are deployed. Okay, so this third party tools may create some security vulnerabilities. So as I mentioned, the applications which are configured in the data centers may be having some vulnerable code or some vulnerable design aspects. Okay, that may leak some confidential data. Similarly, this supply chain management, whatever it is developed, which will be used by the organization, that may be having some security vulnerabilities. So with that, they can also go for getting some data or third party data they can access. So these are the some of the important vulnerabilities and attacks on the data centers. And I think in the coming sessions, Satish is going to discuss about what are the way we can we can tackle all these vulnerabilities or attacks which are having. And with that, I conclude my presentation saying that data centers are an ideal terrorist target, and it is of utmost importance to take the necessary steps to protect these facilities from an attack. And detecting the vulnerabilities on these facilities, it may be a physical infrastructure as a data center or the applications, whatever it is configured in the data centers. First, we need to detect the vulnerabilities on these facilities. Then once it is identified, or assume that you are not able to identify, once you are identify the vulnerability, then so you are need to finding an effective plan to fix the vulnerability. Okay, and it will make the facility a secure place for the any transactions or any services which are accessed rather than the next target of the attack. And security for these facilities is ultimately left up to the facility maintainer. So it may be at the data center side or whichever the organization which is providing the service of the data centers. And FBIB may be able to help improve the security of such locations by cooperating to assist in detection and defining the policy and procedures. So this is what actually from my side. So any questions or any queries?
Thank you, sir. It was a wonderful session. I think there are a few questions which are lined up before we move on to the next session. So I'll read out the questions for you so that you can look into those, you can answer them.
Yes, sir.
There is one question. He is working presently SC Railways Vijayawada division, and
Yes.
they were in developing in-house web applications on Apache and MySQL,
Yes, sir.
PHP, Laravel, and PHP and Windows Server. His question is, what is the application or tools for Windows Server for protection of vulnerability and brute force attacks? What is the application or tools for Windows Server for protection of vulnerability and brute force attack?
I think Satish Babu is going to address this because as Sriram sir has mentioned, I think we can wait till the end of the all the presentation so that we can answer all the queries.
All right, sir. Thank you. And there is another question. What is the best antivirus? Best antivirus.
There is that keeps on changing. So the requirement keeps on changing. As on date, we cannot say someone is best, someone is not best. So that keeps on requirement keeps on increasing because each of the security, antiviruses that may be having some vulnerability. So with that, we cannot say as on date with the present infrastructure or the present processing capability of the hardware, we can say this antivirus is very secure.
Okay, sir. Right. So next question is, how do companies like Cloudflare verify verify whether the request is authenticate or not?
Sir, can you repeat your question?
Sir, how do companies like Cloudflare verify whether the request is authenticate or not?
So that is based on the login credentials or service access credentials given. Whatever the credentials which are given for accessing the services.
Okay. All right, sir. Free antivirus is not a good antivirus.
Free antivirus, that's what, sir, actually, depending on the present day available infrastructure or the hardware processing capabilities, based on that we can say whether a free antivirus is secure or not.
Okay, sir. And how do we improve the security and safety of the RDP? RDP.
Yeah, RDP, because it is posing any type of password, we have to restrict on the type of password that will be given by the user for authentication, as other applications are asking for the stronger password. So we have to ask the user to have a, or the organization need to keep track of the passwords which will be used by the users which will be accessing remote desktop.
All right, sir. And what is the best practices and checklist for a core banking application and ASP model?
Yeah, that I think the remaining speakers are going to address.
Okay, all right. So as of now, those are the questions, sir. And thank you, sir, for enlightening us on the various aspects related
Thank
to
you.
the.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you, sir. Data center threats and vulnerability. Yes, so now we will move on securing data centers. So now next we will move on to the securing data centers. So this session is going to be handled by Satish Babu. So let me give you a brief introduction about Satish Babu before we move on to the actual session. So right now, Mr. Satish Babu is working as a joint director at CDAC, and he's having a total experience of around 18 plus years of experience in the field of telecommunications and IT. And he is associated with CDAC for more than 7 plus years. And he has completed his ME in the field of embedded systems from a College of Engineering, Gondia, which is in part of Anna University, and currently is possessing MBA in the operation research, and is having a wide experience in the various technologies related to the software development, network data center management, cloud computing, and cyber security. And he has published papers in various conferences and journals in the above areas. He is a certified information security professional, which is CISP, and he possesses the practical knowledge in the cloud and security areas. He is presently managing the data center at CDAC Noida and taking care of the overall security of the data center, which includes the cloud technologies, IT infra, network infra, web and mobile applications. So with this brief introduction, we welcome Satish Babu sir to handle the session on how to securing the data centers. So over to you, sir, and we are giving the privileges as a presenter. Satish Babu sir, over to you.
Good afternoon, everyone. So thank you for giving the opportunity to, as a speaker, to present. Okay. I'm just sharing my screen. Just a minute.
Yes, sir, it's visible. Please go ahead.
So, the topic, securing the data center. It's a vast topic, and in a given timeline, I want to just cover up the complete basics, and anything in detail. If we want to go, we can have an interaction. We can have last 5 to 10 minutes for interaction. So when we talk about data center security, there are multiple components in a data center. So most of the people will feel like the IT part in the data center. By default, they get remember the IT infrastructure in the data center and the softwares, network, servers, OS. These are the main things comes into picture. But if we see overall data center, it includes so many things from the civil building security, the perimeter security, physical security, access control systems, and the security of the non-IT infrastructure. Because most of the data center are having outages because of this non-IT infrastructure. So when you talk about security, three things are important. One is the confidentiality, integrity, and the availability of your data services. So the availability part also comes into the picture when you talk about security. So you have to secure all the components in a data center. So the server rooms, access control systems, the NOC, network operation center access control systems, the air conditioning units, UPS, DG set, backup generators, all these things have to be secure. So security starts with the physical layer. So when you talk about data center, uh, you will have multiple layers of security. So the most of the data centers, they claim to have critical data centers, they claim to have 6-layer security. But there should be a bare minimum 3 to 4 layer securities in a data center. So first layer is the your perimeter defense. So wherever your campus is there, the main campus security comes is the perimeter defense of the physical security. Then a clear zone where like say frisking of all the guests and visitors, employees will happen. So basically there will be as like you see in the airports and other places. So physical frisking will be there, and only the intended objects will be allowed to take inside the data center. All these things mostly done manual process. And then you will report to a reception area or a guard area where you will be issued a access systems based on like till what level you want to access inside the data center. Say you may go to visit a NOC room, or there may be a technician who has come to repair a server or something. So he may require entry till data center room. So based on that, like based on the requirement, they will issue a access card for you and all those things. That will be done in the reception area. Then there will be a service corridor before the data center room. Most of the many critical data centers will have this facility. Non-critical data centers will not be having that much security. So next is the entry into your server room. So again, you will have access control or biometrics, and then the RFID card, whatever given to you. Based on that, access will be there. And then once you enter into the server room, you will have the either caged cabinets or a particular cabinets with access control system. Again, one more area of control. So once you enter into the cabinet, then also there will be like accessing specific servers. Either if you are co-located in a complete rack, or you have taken specific rack space, 1U, 2U rack space. Based on that, again, that security will be there. You will not be able to access the other people's server. So whatever the intended thing, only you can have access to those things. So like this physical security, you will be having multiple layers. So how you will plan the physical security? This is the just an indication how that can be implemented. So there will be a parking area and visitor area, and again building entrance will be there. This is the first level security. This is the second level security, and then delivery of goods and other things, and common area. Then entering into the data center, and then server room and a particular rack. So whatever I have explained. So how this is done? This implementation, you can either like these three components are basically intact for any kind of security, be it a physical security or a IT component or a non-IT component. How you secure? You require all these things. So you should have the process and plans. So how many checkpoints, how many layer of security you want to have? First, you have to define that. And then in each checkpoint, what are all the things you will be doing. So where you will have the automated access control system, where you have physical frisking, uh, where they will store their data. If they want to take their hard disk inside, what is the procedure for doing that? So how will you verify that they are not taking your critical data in that hard disk? So there should be process and plan, or those things. That is the primary thing you have to first implement. And then for that process and plan, what are all the technologies you want to implement? Say you want a location tagged RFID card, where wherever he goes, you can precisely tell in which location he is standing now. So that much precise, you can locate the guest. So like that, which technology you want to go? Say biometric plus access card, or only access card, or only biometric, what kind of things you want. And then cameras, you want to install normal infrared cameras or thermal cameras. So these things again depends on the criticality and what is the policy and processes you define. Again, then the final thing is the people, the most important part. Even though you automate everything, the final uh, policy making and then procedures, implementation of those procedures are done by the people. And this is the major gap area. Wherever you go, the security breaches happens because of the people's fault or any miscommunication, because most of the automated systems will not have any any malfunctions most of the time. And they may have known vulnerabilities, and again there should be process for patching those vulnerabilities, and that has to be done by the people. So most of the cases, the people are the responsible person for the security gaps. So that has to be properly addressed. There should be skilled and trained manpowers, and there should be well-defined roles and responsibilities for those people who will be doing what. And then definitely there should be some people for monitoring the things. So for doing, say, for example, frisking of physical frisking, if somebody is doing, somebody should monitor whether they are doing it properly or not. So same way, if cameras are there, automatic face detection also can be there, but somebody has to be there to actually see that like all these processes are going on properly. So basically, this is the about physical security. And then next thing is the non-IT infrastructure. So in the non-IT infrastructure, again, this is a critical thing, because if you want to make a service down, you have to, as a hacker, you have to do so many things to get into that server and to make that service down. For making the entire data center down, you want to just get into their UPS system. That's it. You can make the entire data center down. So, so getting into these systems and protecting these systems, you should mainly concentrate. So most of the times these things are forgotten, and there are so many incidents in the globally. The data centers have been hacked through the non-IT infrastructure, because nowadays all the systems are intelligent systems. They are having multiple type of connectivity, say Modbus connectivity for connecting to BMS, SNMP connectivities for monitoring, and even change management and configuration can be done through the SNMP configuration. So when these kind of intelligent systems are evolving, so the risk factor along with that intelligent systems also increases. So uh, these components, say for example, if somebody shuts down the chiller plant, your data center will automatically shut down within 10 minutes. So you will not even know, like you will not even figure out like how that has happened. You will be just having an alarm from the chiller plant that it has stopped working. You don't even know the who has accessed and how it has come down, if you are not having proper protection for these non-IT infrastructures. So non-IT infrastructures includes that diesel generators, utility power supply. You will be knowing like so many power grid attacks has happened, and that has led to complete down of the data centers wherever the DG set has not taken over or proper backup mechanism is not there. because of power outage in the utility power supply also, there has been incidents of global data center outages. Same way, you have the cooling equipments for continuous cooling of your IT infrastructure, and then you have the support infrastructure for this cooling one like chillers and pumps. And then you have the UPS supply and PDUs to the racks. Even nowadays, all the PDUs are coming with intelligence of monitoring and management. You can shut down any particular socket from the PDU and all these things. So as and when this comfort is increasing, the risk level also is getting increased. So coming to the main part, the IT infrastructure. So as I told you, most of the people think about the IT security as soon as we tell about the data center. And it's actually the fact like that is the major portion, because even the non-IT infrastructures are monitored and managed through the IT systems only. There are DCIM servers or BMS servers through which the complete non-IT infrastructures can be monitored, managed. So, securing the IT infrastructure is a major part, and in that, the network, whatever, how it is networked and the architecture of the network is primarily important. So here in this, you can see this picture, you have multiple zones in your network. So you have the DMZ zone, you have the outer DMZ and inner DMZ. Okay. Inner DMZ is like for, say, for example, intranet and other services. So those services will be there in the inner DMZ, and outer DMZ is for the public services. And then you have the backend database servers and the portal servers and web servers or DNS servers. So all these things are there. Here you can see multiple layer of firewalls. So first is the perimeter firewall, external perimeter firewall. Then comes your internal perimeter firewall, and then your zoning firewall. So each firewall is having a primary role. Basically, the external firewall will be filtering out the threats coming from the external users. And along with this firewall, here you have just, it is shown as firewall. But nowadays, we require so many protection mechanisms from the external accesses. Say, if you talk about the public who are accessing the systems, there may be so many type of people, hackers, or like the cyber attack from particular state or government sponsored agencies, individual hackers, so ethical hackers. There are so many type of people who will be trying to attack your data center. So it has to filter everything. And in the filtering, you have multiple layers from the MAC layer. Like, I will not tell the physical layer. So physical layer, anyway, it is your internal people who can do those things. Other than that, from the MAC level till the application layer. So from the data link layer till the application layer, there can be attack in various levels. So, and different types of attacks. I think Dr. Nagesh ji has covered the vulnerabilities and what are the ways to exploit the vulnerabilities in your data center. He has covered in detail. So we need to have protection for all those things. Say, for example, you have the DOS attack or DDoS attack. Nowadays, DDoS attacks are quite common. So even in our data center, we have every day we are getting the attempts for DDoS attack. So we are mitigating with the specific policies for the DOS and DDoS attacks. So most of the firewalls in next generation firewalls, they have the mitigation capabilities inbuilt, but still it is always advised to have a separate DDoS mitigation things. And then you have the web applications. So many nowadays, all the data centers will have some or other web applications. Without web applications or mobile applications, there will not be any data center. So For protecting that, you should have the web application firewall. Then you need application control. Then you need IPS. You need data leak protection, data leakage protection. Then you want the layer 4 firewall. NATing and patting systems should be there. So port and session level control should be there. Then you should have layer 3 firewall capabilities, like to filter out specific IPs and other things. So all these things, primary filtering will be done by your external firewall. There will not be major zoning components in your external firewall. So it will be having only two zones. One is the outside and other is the inside network. So once it comes to the inside network, then you are having here a router. So through the router, it is going to route the traffic, which is going to outer DMZ layer, and which is going to the next layer of firewall. So here you see the web servers. Same way you have the cache servers, DNS servers. So these servers are used for speeding up your internet access. Cache servers and DNS servers, public DNS servers are required to host any applications. So either you can have these DNS servers and cache servers in your data center, or you can place this in other data center that we will see in the coming slides. And then next you have the inner layer firewall. Again, so this is the second level of protection, where this will do the initial filtering and also particular zoning. Okay. So most of the requests, whatever the it is coming after this, like once you have access the portal, web servers are there. So again, from web servers or load balancers, it is going to access the actual portal application servers. So all the business logics are going to run in this servers. So all the requests coming from the web servers, only those things will be allowed. Nothing from public will directly go into this. So say for example, you have a single sign-on. So single sign-on, once the user enters, the initial page and everything will be loaded from the web server. But once the authentication token and everything has to be sent, so it has to be sent through this firewall. So basically, why you require this firewall is from here, like most of the traffic or the encrypted traffic, SSL encrypted traffic, and most of the things will go in plain text format, except for the passwords and other things. Most of the communication between the web servers and the portal servers will be happening in a plain text format, because if you are going to again encrypt, your latency will increase and your application will slow down. So once you are having this plain text communication, you need to protect it with another second layer of firewall. Then once this will be this second layer will be offering you the portal service only, application services only. No data is going to get stored here. So whatever the data, if you are going to store, you require one more layer of protection. So there you require a third firewall, which is for protecting your most secure zone. That is the MZ, militarized zone. So there you will have the database servers, you will have the FTP servers, file servers. So all the data will be stored here. This is the basic overview of how we can plan a network security in a data center. And this is old architecture, but the conceptual thing is still the same. The new architecture comes out with the software defined networking for data centers, where you don't require these firewalls explicitly, because application layer protection, you don't require much in this. All these things will be covered here, but still you will be having the internal network access. You will have the edge firewalls. So instead of perimeter firewall, zoning firewall, intermediate firewall, now the concept is going like you will have the edge firewalls and the internal network flow protection in the SDNs. So that is the evolving, not evolving, it has already reached the market, and many places it is getting implemented now. So one part is the network, securing your network in a data center. The other part is the again, here also comes the processes and the technology that are going to be implemented. So another major requirement for securing your data center is the identity and access management. So why you require specifically the identity and access management? When you talk about a large data center, there will be so many servers, so many softwares, and so many people accessing in and out of that. So if you are going to control the access manually or through a normal tool, that is going to be a cumbersome process. You have to create the user, you have to and provide the access and role-based access for them. So there comes the identity and access management tools, which will help you to manage the complete system. And as I told you, like from the legacy network protection, SDN is the latest technology. Same way from the identity and access management, there is a concept called the zero trust network architecture. So that is again based on the identity and access. The tags will be given, and you don't require the specific firewalls or port opening and all those things. Once the user is authenticated, he will be able to gain the access, whatever he is having the privileges. Based on the tags, that will be done. So this identity and access management, what are the main features it will have is that it will manage the password of all the users. Say password policy you are implementing. You can implement through a AD or LDAP, or you can integrate those AD and LDAP to a IDAM, like identity and access management tool, and you can implement via that. So you can have the software provisioning tools, like you can you can create user once, and you can provide the for infrastructure management, for the application level access. Over all these things, you can just assign the roles to the users. And then security policy enforcement tools, you can enforce the policy. Say for example, during the office hours or from the specific devices, when he is accessing, he will gain access to the data center systems inside the data center. So out of office hours or out of his shift hours, and if he is accessing from his mobile, the same username and password, if he is accessing, so he will not gain access into those servers. So those kind of security policy can be enforced in the IDAM. And then reporting and monitoring and user entity behavior analysis, UEBA is there. So all these things are most of the IDAM tools are coming out with all these things. So these things can be integrated with that. And then you will have a centralized repository of identities. Again, there is a risk also associated. Whenever you are having more comfort, you will be having more risk. So if this identity and access management is breached, all your access and data security policies are gone. So the tool must be most secure thing in your data center. So when you talk about the overall security of data centers, so you have, as I told you, there are like first you have to define the processes and procedures, then you have to have the systems and tools in place, and then right people and the skilled people is primary thing. And most important, you have to inculcate the culture of security. You should nobody, no employee or no guest should bypass any of the process, or you should not have any influence over the systems to bypass. So these things, this culture has to be implemented. And then this is the basic building block. And through this, what are all the things you have to control? One is the communication systems, the networking, and uh, out the external links, the internet links or VPN links. Then the power, UPS, DG set, and other things. Physical security premises you have to. And then white space. White space is the actual the racks and the servers mounted physically on that. That is called as the white space. And then the security, say SOC, security operation centers, or monitoring systems wherever they, that is that. And then you will have the fire control and then cooling control, all these non-IT safety and security parts. This has to be taken care. So again, overall, like what are all the things you need to implement? You should have a proper governance. You should have a defined data center operations team. Data center availability has to be ensured because, as I told you, availability is the integral part of security. Work culture has to be maintained. Technology strategy, like I am telling, there is a legacy architecture and the moving on to the latest architecture. So that is a continuous this one tech as the in IT the technology excellence is like around 5 to 6 years only. So every 5 to 6 years you should think of keep upgrading your infrastructure, keep upgrading your tools, latest technologies, and all these things you have to strategize to implement it. And then data center optimization, you have to optimize the complete components, all the components. So power efficiency or the network efficiency, bandwidth augmentation and bandwidth control, monitoring tools, all these things you have to keep optimizing it. So again, coming to the implementation of this security, as I told you, people, process, partner, and products. These 4 P's are the basic building block for implementing the security. So currently, like the legacy systems were operated from a single data center. So and then later on it came the DCDR architecture, primary data center and the disaster recovery side. And now it is the era of multi data center and multi cloud architectures. So because of this ease of implementation of cloud and other technologies. So wherever you want, you can migrate your VM within no time, and you can start running your services from there. And even you can have global cache servers at multiple data centers, and your services will never be down when you are running from more than 2 or 3 data centers. So these things are explored and used by almost all the for all the critical applications. But still, then you have the outages. So why do you have outages? Say recently, you might have seen WhatsApp also was having outage, and even government of India is probing the outage in the angle of cyber threat. So if WhatsApp data are stored in multiple countries in multiple servers. Still, they were having outages. Why? Because again, there are the gaps which are there in their processes and the people who are managing it. So these are the main reasons we have the outage. So the WhatsApp outage, again, they were claiming to be a DNS problem. And a few months back, Facebook was having outage. So the Facebook outage was related to the BGP updation in the network link. So some person has done a wrong updation. Because of that, the complete data center network connectivity has gone down. So as and when we are having this features of having less downtime, running from multiple data centers. Along with that, the risks and the associated security threats also getting increased. So we should have that in mind, and we should have a complete security for our data center. So this is my last slide. So I have just touched upon the main important components in a data center security. So you have to establish a security operations center for all data centers. So what are the main components of a security operations center? So in security operations centers, you have to be monitoring all the logs basically. So you require a security information and event management tool, SIEM tool, which collects all the logs, analyzes it, and correlates between the logs, like which user from which firewall when he has entered to which server he has accessed, and the server access logs, firewall log, all these logs it has to correlate. It has to do the log forensics also if we are analyzing any incident, we have to collect the previous logs and we have to do the log forensics. And then compliance, it will maintain, say, for example, ISO 27001 or PCI DSS, HIPAA, or GDPR. These compliances it can maintain. App log monitoring and object access auditing, these things can be done. Application level log monitoring that can be done for performance and for security also. User activity monitoring. As I told you, if some user is having a shift timing and he's doing some activity out of his shift time, then those things alerts can be generated. And dashboards and reporting. File integrity monitoring. System and device log, again, that is the log monitoring, and then retaining the log for a longer period to have the analysis at later date. And then the real-time analysis, whatever the threat feeds it is having, based on that, it will tell you like how many bad players are accessing your network at any point of time, all these things. This is same as one part of it. Other than that, in a security operation center, you should have the endpoint detection and response EDR tools, and then you should have the antivirus and malware tools. You should have VAPT tools. All these things, all the reports and other things are getting correlated through the SIEM tool. So you will be getting logs from your routers, switches, cloud, artificial intelligence, intrusion detection systems. These are just a handful of things, but there are so many things which cannot be incorporated into a single slide. So that depends on the data center to data center implementation. So you have to establish a security operation center for protecting your complete data center and to have the visibility over the complete data center. So that's it from my end. And if any questions are there.
Yeah, thank you, sir, for the wonderful session on securing the data center. And sir, ma'am, like if you have any questions, kindly keep it in the chat area. In the meantime, we will take few questions before we move on to the next session. Thank you, sir, for the wonderful session. And I think many of the doubts are also clarified through this session, like which were asked in the earlier sessions. Yeah, I think a lot of appreciation. Thanks, Satish ji, and very informative. Yes, any questions? Yeah, okay. All right, I think a lot of appreciation, sir, for your wonderful session, and everyone is thanking and appreciating your thing, and very well explained. Okay, thank you so much, sir, and we will move on to the next session, which is very important session, as many of the queries were also there in that data center policies and procedures. So, which is going to be handled by Indraveni madam. Let me give a brief introduction about madam before we move on to the session. So presently Indraveni ma'am is working as a joint director at CDAC, and she has associated CDAC since from 2005 with CDAC, and she has expertise in the web technologies, web design and development, web administration, web security and penetration testing, information security, open source software and cloud computing. Her core research area involves into the coordinating the information security services and carrying the vulnerability and assessment, penetration testing, and security audit of various IT infrastructure and applications. And she is also into the development of automated web application security assessment framework using the open source tools, and coordinated development of various web-based solutions for intra-organization purpose as an outcome of various projects. And of course, like she has many certifications. A few of them are CISA certified, and she is a ISMS lead auditor, and she is also SANS on-demand certification done at advanced web app penetration testing and ethical hacking. And she is also GIAC certified web application penetration testing and ethical hacking. And madam is also website, certified in website quality assurance and certification by STQC. And madam is also certified in effective teaching, uh, cooperative learning, and effectively faculty development, outcomes based education, and IUE CEE at Infosys and Mysore. And Madam has expertise in the area of vulnerability assessment, penetration testing, research and development, policy planning and implementation, risk assessment and impact analysis. And she's a team and a project leadership and implementation. She is involved very important projects of national security. Of course, like I cannot read out those aspects, and she has published many number of papers at national and international level. So with this brief introduction, I request Indraveni madam to start the session.
Thank you, sir. A very good afternoon to all of you. So basically, I am from the security audit background. So this particular session on data center policies and procedures, I will be talking in terms of as an auditor, what are the gaps that we have observed, and by filling in those gaps in your organization could actually benefit in defining the better data center policies and procedures. So in that perspective, I would be covering this particular short session as briefed by all members, very short time. So we can't go in detail, but yes, we are trying to give an overview. So before I dive into the sessions, basically, what is a policy and what is a procedure? So as we say, policy versus policy is something that is once defined, it will change very infrequently. Basically, we define it once. After a 2 years or 1 year time, we will try to change the policy based on the need. But procedures are something that can improve regularly. In a quick way, we can say that policy means who, what, when, and why is the policy been defined. What is the policy talks about is always who it is for, why is this policy required, what it is, and when it has to be executed. These kind of things are usually addressed in the policy. And the procedure majorly covers about how. When you are telling what should be done, who has to do it, and why it has to do, all of those things are defined in the policy well. However, unless everything is implemented well, there is no value to the policy. And that is what is majorly observed. In most cases, there are sophisticated data centers, there are sophisticated network architecture diagrams. People write a very big policy documents securing the policy databases, security systems, and all this. And all of these data centers are usually certified. They are all certified by different for their tires. Different types are there in data center certifications and all. In spite of all of these things, still, as you can see, listening since morning, there are outrages. There are hacks happening on the systems. There are things happening. So why is that happening? Because there is something that is missing. How the defined policy has to be implemented. That procedure is not either stated. If it is stated, it is not implemented. That is where it is what we observe during our most of the audits, that there are implementation gaps. Policy is defined well, people know what they have to do, and most of the times people even know how it should be done, but whether they are doing it or not, that is where is been there are gaps due to which the various attacks are happening. However, since you have already given an overview on multiple threats, what all tools you have to evolve and all, I will be covering on when you are defining a policy or a procedure, what aspects you have to take care so that you can ensure security for the data centers. So as we move further, sorry for a repetition slide. This is a simple example wherein the policy is about, it's basically, if you take with an example, policy states that the product should be delivered within 24 hours from the time the order is placed. That's what the policy talks about. And process states that employees will prepare, who will deliver, the product has to be delivered. So who will make the product? Employees will make the product for delivery, and managers will monitor the process, whether the product has been designed properly or not, whether it has been packed properly, is it been shipped or not. All these things will be monitored by the managers. This is what is the brief process. But the procedure talks about in detail. Jim will fill the orders in category A, B, C. Then somebody else will fill them into the categories of X, Y, Z. Someone else will supervise it. Someone else will handle the things if somebody is in leave. All of these things will be well defined roles and responsibilities. What should be done, when it has to be done, what is the order sequence of activities. All these things will be or should be defined in the procedure. Only then an implementer, who is actually the final end user who is responsible for implementing, will be able to successfully implement the procedures. So the policy is important. At the same time, the detailed procedure is very, very important. So before we go towards policy and procedure, what is your data center model? Which kind of data center are you planning to? Are you planning to host it within your premises, or you're planning to put it into the cloud? Are you planning to host your data center for offering services to somebody else? Or is it for your own purpose, or your own websites you'll be hosting within your on-prem cloud, on-prem data center, or on a cloud-based data center? What is that you are trying to look for? That is what we have to decide first and foremost. Once that has been decided, there are certain challenges in each of these things. For example, you're choosing a cloud. So definitely, as you all are aware of, I'm trying to host my complete data center on the Amazon cloud or any other public clouds that are available. Though it is public, it can be, we can choose it, whether within the public code, I want a dedicated infrastructure, or I'll be using a shared infrastructure. Kind of a things we can decide upon and plan that my data center hosting of so and so websites and applications, I'll be using cloud. In that case, most of our responsibilities are left to the cloud service provider. However, we cannot assume that the service providers will be responsible and will treat your data as important as theirs. That we cannot guarantee. Unless the data is with us, nobody else will be taking care the way we take care about our data. Correct? So this particular challenge is there with respect to cloud hostings. However, by drafting down strong agreements, ensuring regular audits and monitoring is happening on the cloud environment, these things can be sorted out in one or the other way. Definitely, the agreement would also have legal aspects into it. Somewhere something has gone wrong, who will be responsible legally, how you can handle those things. All of these things should be well drafted. So whenever we are going for a cloud, the strong agreement, SLA agreement, is very, very important, and you should thoroughly go through it, ensure that all the points you are aware of what you are signing on that. Do not just sign the agreement because you need to host something very urgently. It's because there are so many aspects that the cloud service providers will try to mention in the agreements, which can actually harm our data at the later point of time. If it is not been read properly, or you're not acknowledging it properly, or you're not trying to draft how it should be handled down. And all the agreements will have a shared responsibility matrix. So we have to ensure, most CSPs, they may skip adding this. However, if you are worried about what should be your cup of tea, what should be their cup of tea, definitely we should ask for this shared responsibility matrix, which gives a clear-cut single picture of the activities which you should be doing, what the CSP will be taking care. For example, there is a server down, the website has crashed due to some reason. Who will be responsible for making the backup site up? The CSP should be available. The CSP's environment should handle the automatic recovery of the backup systems, right? Such things are there or not? Who will be responsible of that? There are logs generated by the system regularly. What if one day your hard disk space is full because of the logs being generated a lot? Who will be taking care about rotation of the logs, backing up the logs from your server to the other system? So these responsibilities should be well drafted, and we should know how much is our activities and what we have to take care in case of the cloud. And in case of on-premises, along with all these activities, there are much more other activities which we will be responsible, and we have to take care of various activities along with the security things, the periodic reviews on the accesses that are happening. Ensure that all the terminals, that is the physical protection, entry of the data centers and all, will be two-factor authenticated. The regular maintenance, third-party monitorings, diesel generators, battery backups. Where are you putting your diesel cans in your data center. It comes under the physical protection, fire suppression systems, air coolers, all of these things will be our responsibility. So even though it is our responsibility, if really it is a critical data that it is hosting, it's recommended go for it on-prem. If it is cloud, ensure proper agreement. However, once you decided, I'll be going with the cloud or on-premises. The next point is, what is your plan B? Whether it is a cloud system or your on-premises PC, what happens if your system is down? What is your plan B for your website? What is the plan B for your services that you are offering? If that is not available, definitely nothing can be handled, and this has already been addressed. So disaster recovery should be there. On failure, what has to be taken care and on. So always ensure have proper backups. Backup is stored at which location? You're taking the backup, but the backup is stored on the same server. Then what, there is of no use, right? Similarly, at what point will be your recovery points? What will be your recovery time objectives? All these things should be well defined in your policy documents. So we'll go there anyway. So unless you have this, again, though we have a very sophisticated data center, on failures, if our system is down, your business is going to affect, your services would affect. So it is always important for us to think about the recovery state also whenever you're hosting anything. Now, the moment we have what kinds of cloud I'm going to use and what is my plan B. Am I looking for a complete DR system, or I'm trying to replicate only my data backup? For example, there are cases where people say that though my website is down for 1-2 hours, that's okay. My business doesn't affect a lot. Then I don't need to invest in maintaining the complete DR somewhere else. I just need to take backups, ensure the backup is there properly and it is in a recoverable state. Then a 2 hours of downtime is okay for me because it doesn't impact my business much. I can restore my backup into another server and rehost the website. If my business is going to affect even for a single second, if the site is down, kind of a WhatsApp or something, definitely there should be a sophisticated DR. So such decisions should be taken based on what services you are using for your data center, for where you are hosting, all these things. Once such things are aware of, you are aware of what you want, what you need, what you are planning to implement in the data center, only then you will be able to decide upon what kind of DC you want, what kind of environment you are looking for and on. Then once all of these things are decided, what services are you planning to offer on your data centers? Most of the times, if you're hosting it for within your organization, many of these services would not be there because it's my organization purpose is to host their websites, whatever they develop internally, they're going to host it. Then I won't be requiring all these public IPs as a services, co-location service, infrastructure service, all these would not be required. However, since you are responsible for your data center, you still have to provide certain services to the application owners or to the groups who are hosting their application in your data center within the same organizations, where you'll have to tell them you'll be providing FTP service, you'll be providing a backup service. That is, though you're hosting system here, by sharing information and what are the critical data and all, you'll have to define a backup policy, you'll have to ensure the policy is implemented, all these things. Storage space you'll be providing, business continuity management, all these things will be applicable for even you're hosting your own applications. But if you're doing a data center as a service, you're trying to open it for other people also to host it, something like state data centers and all, where they host lot of government portals, lot of institutional websites also. In that case, they have various services. So every data center should first, before I go with the policy, this is all the background preparation I am trying to explain. Before you define your policy, what you should make ready with. You have to define your type, you have to define your plan Bs, what are the critical, non-critical, what is that you're going to host it over there, then what are your services. This is what we discussed so far. The moment all of these things are clear to me, then we start documenting the policy. Sorry. And when I say policy, this is an overview of generally a data center security policy. We're talking about security policy. There is also a different policy called as data center policy, if not security. That talks about various other aspects also. It's not about only the security concept. It also talks about the fiscal incentives, non-fiscal incentives, power, thermal, all these things also it would address. So This particular data security policy would usually, these are certain bare points, there can be much more, but these are something that are mandatory, are yes, good to be put into your policy, which will add advantage to your policy documents. Scope, physical security, software security, data traffic flows, data security, access security, BCP plans, backup policy, patch management, change management. These are certain things which are mandated, that if at all you're hosting a data center and you're hosting applications, these are something that are definitely required to manage the data center securely. And when you're having all of these policies, respect to each policy, refer the respective standard operating procedure. Once the policy is defined, now how do you implement this policy? Go and refer so and so SOP document. That is what we have to refer on to. So that is what would be your policy. However, to just give you pointers into policies would add no value. So I would just try to put you a simple steps, baby steps, to help you define a policy, what best practices you have to follow before you implement, before you start your data center. If you have already started also, you can still plan the things. 3 parts you can divide into: pre-deployment, deployment, and post-deployment. What should be you look for? What are the best practices that you have to follow to ensure the best data security policy, data center security policy? Now, why I'm saying, you can see pre-deployment, deployment, and post-deployment. When I say pre-deployment, we need to first define our goal. What is the goal for your data center? Define your ideal future state of your data center. As I said, right, you want to offer it as a business to somebody else, or you want to host in-house applications. What is your goal for your data center is what one has to define. Then you have to plan your network architecture, understanding the traffic flows from the LAN to the data center. A developer is sitting within the organization. From developer to data center, will there be a network connection required? If required, how do I plan that? Whether the data center need internet, whether the communication data flow happens from the DC to internet, internet to DC or not. Within the data center, there are so many applications. Applications can be hosted by different groups, by different types of applications and all. Whether these applications should have a connection between them. If yes, is there a need for a firewall within the systems? There are cases where critical organizations, they even try to put a firewall between the database server and the application server to add more security. If you see, maybe in the initial slides, in the threats and vulnerabilities and all, various vulnerabilities and threats are being addressed in data center. And today we are in a state that insider threats are much more than external threats, either known or unknown threats, but insider threats are many because of these connectivity gaps and all these things. So if there is a threat happening to one particular server, it can affect the other server also. So in between servers also, people are trying to put security mechanisms in terms of WAFs, in terms of a proper logging systems, filtering systems, and all these things. Once you have a plan of this architecture, identify your stakeholders. Who should be allowed to access your data centers? IT support teams, or security groups, or your other different development groups. This way we have to identify who will be having access to your data center. Now we have to assess your data center. It means you have to prepare an inventory of your physical and virtual environment assets, then prioritize which are the critical servers, which are the servers which are hosting applications but not very critical. In that way, you will be able to handle which server I have to prioritize for the higher availability, which server I can make it a little downtime is also okay. That kind of a prioritizations you can do by assessing your data center inventory. Then segmentation strategy means you need to group your assets. You have to introduce firewalls in your architectures, segment the data center applications, consider the SDN solutions. Okay, this way we will be able to plan the DC environment thing. Based on this pre-deployment plan, go with your actual deployment. When you're starting your actual deployment, start writing about policies. Now you know who are the stakeholders. Now you will be able to easily write your policy. Who will have to have how much of the access? The database administrator will have database server access only. Why should you have another server access? Authentication policy. You'll be using a simple login password, or you want a two-factor authentication. Do you need a dongle-based authentication? There are organizations who use all of these systems. Encryption, decryption policies. Inside my DC also, apart from the SSL communication, is there a need for another data encryption policy to be implemented? Traffic blocking policies, backup policy. These are the policies which you have to define. Based on the pre-deployment, all of these policies are one or the other way related to the answer that you got in the previous pre-deployment slide points. So that will help us in defining the policies which will be applicable during the deployment of the data center and your applications on the data center. Once this is done, the post deployment activities. So your center is ready, your infrastructure is ready, you have defined good policies, backup policies, everything is there. After that, what we have to do? We have to log all our data center traffic, monitor the allow and block rules, who is coming in, who is going out. If there are so many block rules coming up, it means somebody is trying to intrude into the network. So that intelligence monitoring should be there. Periodically compare the baseline measurements. You have to have your regular standard practice, what will be the regular access methodologies. If there are so many deviations happening to the baseline, immediately escalate it or look into the things, go deep into the incident and try to assess the things. These are all post deployment. Heading is post deployment, I missed it. So in this way, by planning your pre-deployment, deployment and post-deployment activities, it'll give you a full-fledged understanding on what kind of policies you have to define. Once the policy is stated, each policy will have one or more SOPs attached. SOP is nothing but the procedure, standard operating procedure we call. When I say software security, the software security will have simple statements that your system should be hardened, your system should be secured enough and all. However, it can have multiple SOPs. Windows operating system SOP, which means Windows operating system, what kind of standard operating procedure should be followed, Linux SOP, database SOP, learning management system SOP. Like this, each software can have a different standard operating procedure defined. So one policy document can have more than one SOP documents or a procedural documents. Based on the requirement, people will try to pick the respective procedure and implement it. So in this way, the policy and procedure documents should be defined by considering all of these pointers into the consideration. If you are considering all these things, it would help us in setting up the proper procedures. So this is just a simple overview of the types of standard operating procedures that will help you initially for your data center. System maintenance SOP. What is your process for maintaining your system? Be it the time maintenance. Are you planning to have a NTP server? Are you planning to have your patch management system within within the environment? Or you'll be doing manual updates, or you'll be doing those updates offline. All of those things should be well drafted and procedures should be defined. Physical security procedures, logical security SOPs, incident handling. Some incident happened. What should we do? If the security analyst who is sitting at your SOC is not being told what he has to do, he'll see the SOC continuously, he'll be monitoring some incident triggered. What action he has to take immediately if it's not defined anywhere, he would just monitor and just say to his colleague sitting next to him that some incident happened. But what action has to be taken should be briefed. Only then he will take an action. So the procedures are most important. So these are briefly the types of SOPs that can help you. And every procedure document, SOP document, if you are trying to include all of these pointers, these are the headings I am giving you. There are templates available on the internet for the SOPs also. So if you are addressing most of these points, that will be a good SOP answering all types of questions that an end user may arise during the implementation. So consider having all of these things put up. Do add a explanation or descriptions for all of these pointers for every SOP that you are deriving. That would definitely help us in coming out with a good SOP documents for the entire policies that we have defined. Among all of these things, most important are roles and responsibilities, the procedure, operations, equipments, procedures, defining warnings, incident handling, troubleshooting procedure, testing mechanisms. These are very, very important. Apart from this, the rest also will be helpful. Training means this talks about what kind of training one has to be given, who will be responsible for executing this SOP. That is what is this training heading talks about. So all of these headings will really help us to implement properly without any gaps at the later point of time. So that's the brief about the SOP contents. And For your information, I just picked it out from some available resource. There are already data center policies. As I said, these are policies not with respect to security. They do cover security, but they also cover the general policy. So India also have a draft data center policy 2020. It was drafted. However, till date it is not been finalized. It is still in the draft version. And each data center, Tamil Nadu data center, Telangana data center, Odisha, West Bengal, UP, all of these data centers, the state data centers have their own data center policy defined. If you want, you can refer them, which has a generic policy statements. Then you can add on to that and make your own policy for your organizations. These are some references for your purpose. Moving towards my last slide. Already these have been covered in the previous slide. However, I just put the categories. Maybe you can use this list for at a later point of time by referring PPT. These are the category of the tools. I'm not naming any tool name. I'm naming the category. If you are having this category of tools set up in your data center, your security posture of the data center will be at a good level. A SIEM will try to have a continuous monitoring on the incidents that are happening on the network. The PAM and PIM, privilege access management, privilege identity management, they give a very good access layer. Every user, whoever accesses the server, they cannot directly do an RDP or an SSH to the servers. They have to go through this PIM and PAM. Ensure this. If you're doing that, complete monitoring on who is accessing what at what time, all these things can be controlled well. Similarly, there are tools which do database activity monitoring, that is called as the DAM tools. There are DLP tools to avoid prevention of data leakage. There are network monitoring tools to see the uptime and downtime. Similarly, system uptime, downtime can be monitored. And also, as a best practice, these points I'm putting based on my experience on audits perspectives. Having a packet capturing tools within your data center, that is called as tapping points, will help you to review your network randomly, sometimes quarterly or so. If you do a packet capturing, a tapping of the network packets at certain points, before the firewall, after the firewall, before the router, after the router, this will help us actually to see what kind of traffic is flowing in and out apart from your regular firewall things. Really, this would benefit you a lot if at all you're implementing regular tappings and also analyzing those packets randomly during some quarterly or half yearly. Then also go for tools which do deep packet inspections if at all it is a critical environment. And overall, try to see if you can implement some kind of a software defined perimeter kind of a thing. It's also called zero trust network access, where it will give you a full-fledged environment to access the data center systems from any kind of a device, but in a secured way. And remember, zero trust is what you have to think of whenever you're implementing a data center or anything. Do not trust an insider. We should not trust insider administrator, the DB administrator and all. Everybody should be considered as a untrusted only and then handle the systems. Then that will help us in achieving to security to an extent. So this is the glimpse of some of the tools categories. And these are the references which can help you to get much more information on these aspects. That's it. So with this, my session concludes. I hope I was able to give you a brief overview on how you can set the policies and procedures. If there are any questions, I can take it up. Probably, I think all the sessions are done. We can even take the questions with respect to others also. Yes, sir. I think the presentations will be shared to the participants. Probably Jagdish sir will be sharing them to all of you. Or we will put it in one single place for you to download easily. And that link we can share you through emails. Are there any more questions? Sir, as I said, no, when we say the best tool, every tool has its own pros and cons. The way we have to do with respect to choosing the tools is, be it a deep packet inspection or be it an antivirus or a data leakage prevention systems, it's best to actually get a comparison, call for different vendors, ask them to come and present their features and all. By the way they are presenting the features, we will be able to compare and decide upon, sir. Today, I mean, in this particular forum, we cannot say this particular tool will be the best or something. But yes, it's our responsibility to get inputs from various vendors and then do the analysis. Because they are all commercials. Open source tools, there are many, but commercial tools, we won't be able to in a state to name a specific tool. Okay, so most people have asked questions. What are the basic components of SOC? I think this has been already answered, no? Which should be, what are the basic components of SOC for a beginner organization which should be applied? Sir, for a beginner organization, the same tool should be sufficient enough to start with, where all the servers, so syslogs and the application logs can be collected. And that logs, if you're starting analyzing, that will be the first point for the SOC establishment, sir. Will you explain about cyber security? I think I'm missing some question. Is there an application from Windows Server protecting from brute force attacks? This was done, right? Sir, your question is talking about two things. I'm just reading out the question posed by Sri KV Subbarao. Sorry, KV Subba is there. I'm sorry for that. Question is there any application for Windows Server protecting from brute force attacks when using with open source Apache? So there are two things. One is, when you're saying open source Apache, I understand you're hosting a web application over the Apache web server. So that is a web-based solution. And to prevent the brute force attacks over the web application, the solution is to implement the CAPTCHA or two-factor authentications kind of a things, or even account lockout will help us to stop the brute force attacks. If it is hosted on a Windows server or a Linux server, it doesn't impact, sir. If you're hosting it on the open source Apache, finally it is a web-based application. And the solution for brute force attack over the for a web application is to have a CAPTCHA, to have a two-factor authentication or an account lockout system. Does this answer your question, sir? There's a question from VS. Will you explain about cybersecurity? Sir, can your question be a little more specific on what exactly you're looking for? When we are saying cybersecurity, it's a vast thing. If I have to say as a bullet point, cybersecurity is all about achieving confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Now, how do we achieve these three things? Whereas using various tools, various policies, procedures is up to us. So to prevent port scanning, you can set up certain firewall rules and all, which will stop the automated port scanning on the system. But yes, there are different means to even bypass that. People try to do individual port access verifications, and just based on the response, they decide whether the port is open or not. One way is to do the complete scan on all 65,000 ports, which if a firewall identifies single IP scanning for multiple things, it will block it. So there are people, intelligent hackers, who try to scan at the same time, posing themselves from different IP addresses, and they try to access each port from different IP. So the firewall behavior, based on behavior, it doesn't consider it to be an attack. So the best way is, instead of stopping port scan, if definitely firewall would stop, but somebody is really trying to intrude into the system, the best way is to have your unnecessary ports closed only. Having it open and allowing firewall only to control those ports is not a suggested way. The best way is close your unwanted ports. If there is really a need of some port open to the public, then ensure the necessary security hardening rules or policies implemented on that particular service, so that the hacks would not happen through that particular port. What are the minimum requirements for setup of a small data center, like cost, device, etc.? Okay. Sir, like I said, if you go to my slide talking about the pre-deployment, you try to jot down the answers for these points, sir. What you wanted to exactly host. If it is one single application we are trying to host, then you can just try to take up a service from some co-located data center or something. But you are trying to host your own system. It all depends on the how much of infrastructure you are hosting. Rather than software, infrastructure costs more. If you're hosting data center, you need a space, you need a proper AC setup, you need a backup UPS backups, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, what level of backups you are expecting based on the redundancy that you need. There are so many aspects that we have to consider to define the costing, sir. So if you really want, maybe a one-to-one discussions can happen. I think Satish Babu sir would be the best person to tell about the cost or approximate cost. Maybe by discussing with you, he can help you in doing that, sir. So, okay. I desire the clarity on whether the network operation center and security operation center separately located and are managed by separate resources. Okay. Yes, sir. SOC and NOC are usually implemented separately. Some organizations even implement merged also, but it is a good practice to have them separately and managed by different resources. That actually gives you an independence in visibility. Certain things missed out at the SOC can be handled at the NOC also. So that's a preferred way itself. Can blocking of IP in firewall is best way to stop the port scanning? Sorry, sir, it's not about blocking an IP. You have to block the port of your internal server with the traffic. I mean, your firewall rule should be defined for your inbound traffic coming to your particular server, which port you have to allow. It won't be usually IP based. If you're blocking one IP, it would block only from that. Somebody else can try from some other IPs also. Yeah, the checklist as per the new certain guidelines and compliances. Yes, the certain has given a detailed guidelines for the data centers, and it also includes guidelines for the ISPs, service providers also, in terms of handling the data, securing the infrastructure, IPs, routers, all these things. Sir, it is available online. If required, I will share the link offline to you, sir. Maybe you can drop a mail to Jagdish, sir. Through him, I will send the list document. So the port exploits can be detected at the firewall level. So if the traffic is coming over a specific port, the firewall will be definitely able to identify it. If there is a bypass happening at the firewall, it means from external they will reach your system through port 80, but inside the application they are trying to exploit some other port that has to be handled at the application level. So there are various security devices that play their role, sir. As I said, no, there are you need to have a proper SIM, you need to have a proper PIM and PAM systems, proper IPS systems, and all of them play their own role. And the SIM or SOC is something that which will try to correlate the logs from all of the security devices and then give you a picture on how the attack might have happened or from where the attack has originated, on what port the attack happened. These kind of clarifications can come in by taking the evidences from all of the security devices. Should an organization go for a Make in India SIEM solution or industry repeated SIEM? So definitely Make in India SIEM solution is something that Indian government is also preferring, and we may also look for into it. However, finally a decision on using any tool has to be taken based on the features that are provided by the solution and the proven output of that particular tool. So unless the tool proves that it can perform an index, so one will have to take a detailed demonstration, understand, perform a real attack, or have a trial version or what we say evaluation version set up for your environment, do certain attacks on the systems and see whether really the firewall or the SIEM is trying to handle them, and then take a decision, sir. Unless we do our analysis, we cannot conclude on any tool. Unfortunately, we can't just take it up. Something that you can, if you're really looking for, there is a Gartner rating provided for the tools. So when you're trying to look for, maybe you can search in terms of Gartner rated SIEM tool that way. That also would help us in deciding which tool can actually give us the best output. Sir, I think we will answer this question. Port scanning DNS port 53, what to be done? You can actually handle it at the firewall level, sir. Satish, sir, if you are available, you want to answer this, means you may please answer, sir, since it is at the DC level.
Which question, ma'am?
Yeah, there's a question from VS sir that if they do port scanning on DNS port 53, what can we do? Is the question.
When you talk about the port scanning for DNS, like see, it can be a single IP from where continuous scanning may come, or it can be a DDoS kind of attack from multiple IPs. So you have to devise a policy for that at your firewall level. And in DNS, you will have either TCP traffic, and most of the time you will have the UDP traffic. So you can matlab control the sessions from a particular source IP to the DNS IP. So like that, rules you can frame it in your firewall, and then you can block it. If you have any DDoS solution, that will be the best thing. But with the normal firewall also, you can mitigate this.
Thank you, sir. So I hope that question has been answered. And yes, I can see few more questions. What is ethical hacking? How do we prevent and all? See, ethical hacking is again a kind of penetrating into the systems. So we are trying to hack into the systems, but we do it ethically. In the sense, organization has to approve you, nominate you, saying that yes, I am allowing you to do hacking on my system to assess the strength of the particular system. If you're doing it ethically, that is what is ethical hacking. It includes a lot of activities: information gathering, exploitation, penetration testing, sport scannings. All of these activities come under the ethical hacking. Okay. So I think we answered most of the questions. How to prevent entry of malware in data center? Yes, the firewalls itself should actually have an anti-malware solutions installed into it. Necessary policies, rules should be enabled, and that anti-malware solution should be having a regularly updated signatures and all with respect to the malwares. That way, it will be able to stop the malwares. Share the references for developing SOPs. Okay, we will be sharing. Avinash sir, I didn't get any question. I think if I have missed the question, maybe you can type in again, because whatever questions I could see, I'm trying to answer it. Obfuscation bypassing, can obfuscation bypass firewalls? Obfuscation is something that we are implementing at the source code of the servers, and firewall is something, it's outside the server. So the traffic that definitely comes from the firewalls. So there is nothing that I'm bypassing over there. And obfuscation, it will protect only from doing a reverse engineering in case somebody intrudes into your servers through some attack, some malware is coming. It cannot steal your code because your code is obfuscated. They won't be able to tamper the server's code or something. But the other attacks, even if your code is obfuscated, one will still be able to do a DOS attack if there is no captcha. One will be able to do an SQL injection if there is no proper validations. So that's all again part of the requests. So obfuscation only will protect apart against reverse engineering. No other protection does the obfuscation provides us. Okay. Okay, great. I think I've tried to answer all the questions. In case something is missed out, probably you can drop an email to Jagdish sir. He will forward to us. We will be able to answer up the questions. Thank you so much. Yeah, we will be sharing the PPT. Thank you. I hope it was, is there any possible attack Windows Server file structure from network, and kindly suggest how to prevent it? So KV Subbarao sir, I think we are going beyond the time. So this question I will be answering through email mode sir from Jagdish sir. I'll just take a snap of this particular question and then we'll answer it separately. Thank you so much. Sir, you want to conclude? This question is. It will be okay. Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. Over to you, Jagdish sir.
Thank you, ma'am, for patiently answering all the questions by the various participants. And we thank Indraveni ma'am and Satish sir and Nagesh sir and Sriram sir for taking all the sessions and clarifying all the doubts. I hope that the session will be useful to all of you. And if you have any questions, kindly keep us informed at isea@cdeck.in. So we will, if there are any specific questions, we will get back on those things. You can just mail us at isea@cdeck.in. If there are any specific questions, we'll try to get back on those, areas. So before we conclude, let me show it to you, our ISEA portal. Great, thank you. Yeah, I think mom was telling like if there is any feedback link, and we will share with you. We will share like because we are